Welcome to the Intuition Incubator. Today, I have with me Judy Hoberman. Judy is the president of Judy Hoberman and Associates, an award-winning speaker, best-selling author, and executive coach specializing in women in leadership and sales. With over 30 years of experience in business, she's the author of 4 books, including Selling in a Skirt and Walking on the Glass 4. Judy is a TEDx speaker, podcast host, and advocate for empowering women to lead authentically. Her mission is simple yet powerful: to help one woman a day while promoting her philosophy. Women want to be treated equally, not identically. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I couldn't wait for today.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've connected. So I'm excited for the listeners to hear everything you have to offer. And I thought maybe we could just start. Listen, you worked in a very difficult industry for women for a very, very long time, and we're kind of a pioneer in that. And I can imagine there's been a lot of intuitive and not so intuitive moments, and I thought maybe we could start just by sharing your story a little bit with the listeners. Where did you begin? Where did you begin, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, it's interesting because I really started decades ago with Fuller Brush. And if anybody remembers Fuller Brush, then I know how old you are. But this was true door to door. You were knocking on doors. And so the first door I went to was my mom's, figuring I'm going to start this career off. It's going to be amazing. She's going to buy everything. And she said no. But she taught me 2 lessons. And the reason I say this is because I carried these lessons with me throughout my life. Number one lesson was, just because somebody loves you does not mean they're going to buy from you when it's something they don't want or need. Number two, just because somebody loves you, they're going to share you with their friends and their family. And that was the truth, because she did share with, some of her friends needed mops and brooms. It was very sexy stuff I was selling. But truly, I carried that with me forever, because, and I still do, because it really taught me the lesson about sales. So fast forward now into the 1990, and I started in financial services. I was the only female. They did not want me there. I did check a box. And this is even before the boxes were really there, but I did check it anyway. But what I found was, I was a single mom, and they did not care who I was, what I was. The only thing they cared about were numbers. And that's the only thing people can judge you on with sales. So even though it's really, like a tough situation for some people, if you do what you do and you do it the right way and you do your best, you're right up there with everybody else. Because when you're on 100% commission, we all make the same thing. It just depends on how much you do. So intuitively, I knew I was in the right place. I just didn't know how to figure it out, like what to do. But I kept going with my gut, going, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be here. And so I just did what I was supposed to do. I built relationships. And with those relationships came the sales. And with the sales came the commission. And with all of that, people were starting to say, well, how did you do that? And why are you people staying on the books? And how did you get them to buy that? And I would say, I don't get anybody to do anything. We have a conversation. So I did really well. And I had 3 agencies of my own. And then I was visited by the CEO of the company, and he invited me to be a corporate executive.
Mm.
And I had never done anything where I got a regular paycheck ever in my life. I was always 100% commission. I thought, well, this could be fun. And so I moved to Dallas, and I had money deposited every other week. And what I discovered was, whether you do something or not, they're still paying you, because a lot of people were sitting there playing solitaire or whatever. And I was out there traveling all the time. We had 4,000 producers I was responsible for. We had 254 offices I was responsible for. So I actually worked, but the culture was not where I needed to be. So I jumped ship. And when I jumped, I was not 25 years old. And I wasn't married at the time, and my kids were grown, and, so all of that kind of stuff builds up. But I started a company, Selling in a Skirt is how it started. And what I discovered, that it was what I needed. When
Mm.
when I was going through this whole period, I needed somebody that looked like me, not here, but a female that would have understood what it's like to be a single mom, what it's like to, have to get over yourself, what it's like to have the imposter syndrome and say, okay, I'm going to evict you now. I didn't have that. So I became that. I became a coach and a mentor and a trainer for women. And it
Mm.
was what I needed when I was going through it. And that's how I decided to do that as well. What was I looking for? And that's who I was looking for. It's me.
Yeah, isn't it so funny? We always do what we teach what we need to learn, right? I
Right.
mean, and that's what makes it so fun, and so rewarding is that we're learning along the way.
And
I
usually
think
your clients are yourself.
exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like it's so tragic when you meet people who, feel that they should already know these things or they should whatever. And I'm always like, listen, you know, we're onions, like we're all maybe at different stages along the way, but you know, we do this because we teach what we need.
Right. Right. And those people that are so far ahead of you, you can't compare their chapter 20 with your chapter 1. And you shouldn't forget all the people because they started somewhere also. So I'm very good at this, but I also had to teach myself this. And that some of that is hard to do. But I didn't.
Yeah. I liked what you said. You said your mom taught you two things, and one thing was that just because someone loves you doesn't mean they're going to buy from you, which is kind of a right. Like that's a hard lesson,
Listen.
and but I think that we all have that part of ourselves that can feel like victimized, like oh I didn't get it or whatever, and sort of that tough love of like listen, yeah, just because someone loves you doesn't mean it's going to happen. But then the other thing that you said was because someone loves you, they will share you. And that's the other piece that I think I know for me, ever being in sales is like not my thing. And it's always, anytime I have been in that position, I've been very uncomfortable and learning that lesson of like, yeah, people want to share you because they love you.
Right. And you do when you say you're going to do something and you do it, that speaks volumes because so many people don't. They promise you a million things and they don't come through with anything. So, I mean, there's all little pieces to that puzzle, but that is very true. People do want to share you. People share a restaurant with you. People share where you get your hair cut. People share all kinds of things. Why wouldn't they share a person who is doing a great job? Like, why wouldn't they?
So, what I wanted you to share was, working in these companies where you said they didn't want you there. And you kind of stuck with that. Like, how, and you said you knew intuitively, I'm meant to be here. I'm meant to be here. How did you know that? Like, what I think one of the things that's so tough for people is a lot of times they're like, well, is this my intuition or am I chasing a dream? Or, like, how did you know? And how did you do it? How did you deal?
Okay, so first let me tell you about when I first started my company about when I didn't listen to my intuition and my gut because that's a really serious thing. Then I'll go back to how I did. Um, so when I first started my company, I was invited to this presentation, and during the presentation, they were talking about that they needed trainers. And so I was recommended. And when I was talking to this gentleman, he was so nice. Oh my God, he was so nice. And I really liked him. And he said, it's going to be great. We'll get to work together, blah, blah, blah. It was awesome. There was only one caveat that it was a year-long contract. And when you start a company, a year-long contract is amazing to get. But I could not speak about selling in a skirt or give out my business card or anything, no matter where I went. And I thought, okay, I could put this aside for a year.
Hmm.
And on my way home, I remember distinctly that my back started like having spasms because it was like 40 miles away that I had to drive. And I kept thinking, what did I did? I reach something? I mean, I was such pain, such
Hmm.
pain. And when I got out of the car, I literally had to crawl in my garage to get into the house. Literally, I could not even stand up. And I thought, what did I just do? Like, what happened? Because it just was like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, I just gave away my company for a year is what I did. It just,
Mhm.
park it. And I thought, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And so I picked up the phone on the floor. I'm laying on the floor. I picked up the phone And I called him and he said, "Oh, Judy, we're so excited. We've told everybody and da da da." And I said, "I can't do it." And as I said, "I can't do it," I stood up. I got to, I
Oh my God.
literally got to stand up. And
You're
he said, "What do you
amazing.
mean?" And I said, "I just don't think this is the right timing for me, but I do have somebody I could recommend to you right off the top." And he was okay with that. And right then and there, I knew I can never go against my gut, my intuition, whatever you want. I could never do that again because I physically can feel it. And that was a perfect indication. So now let's go back to when I was in financial services and they didn't want me or anything else. And I remember distinctly that I wanted to quit every day, 100 times a day. I hated it more than anything.
Oh, really?
But I knew what the potential was. And I was a single mom. So I thought, I just got to stick with this. And every day I would drive my kids to school and I would say, oh, I have to drive here and I have to go there. I don't even know what I'm walking into because I didn't sell on the phone. I only sold an appointment. That's all I sold. But when I got there, I was fine and I loved the people so much. It was just getting me there. So one morning, I looked at my kids, getting them ready, and I said, "These are the two most amazing humans in the entire world. And my only job is to protect them."
Mm.
And that was when, like, the cartoon light bulb was above my head,
Mhm.
flashing, boop, boop, boop. And I went, "Oh my God, if my only job is to protect them and I can protect them, why can't I protect everybody else? Why can't I do that?" And so that day I dropped them off at school and I got in my car and I moved the rearview mirror and I said, "Today you have the privilege of protecting a family." That's what I said. And that was the end of it. I I did really well because I wasn't, giving myself, "Oh my God, again, blah, 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 blah." What I was doing is I was saying what I really felt about why I should be there. And that's what I did. And so that's how I got to stay. That's how I got to, not listen to all the noise. And that's when I got to say to everybody, "Hey, if you want to talk about me, don't do it behind my back. Talk to me, say it to my face. I'm a big girl." And that was the end of it. But that's
That's
how
like
it
divine intervention,
and
right?
it probably is. It's something because who the heck would have ever thought that saying that about these two beautiful humans would all of a sudden change everything in my mindset, everything.
Yeah.
And that's truly what happened.
But it's the beauty of changing a thought.
Yeah,
And one minute we are so attached and so fixated on this is the worst thing, this is torture, this is awful, poor me, oh my God. And we're in this position of lack and having to push, push, push up a hill to make things
right,
happen. And the next minute, wait a minute, I have a privilege of protecting these families. And
right.
everything changes. Your attitude about everything changes. Their way of being at work changes. And of course, when all that changed,
Everything
energy
changes.
releases and you're
And
bringing.
you letting other things in, other people, other opportunities, and that's what happens. I always talk about a story that I have about when I was growing up and the things that my father would say to me and all this, and that's what my TED Talk is about. And I remember I was in a program, and one of the guys, he was really into mindset and energy, and at some points, you just think, "Oh, it's just so woo woo that people say this and, whatever." So he said to me one day, "Tell me about you." And I bring up this story and he looked at me and he said, "Why do you talk about that?" I said, "Well, that's my story." He said, "Really?" He said, "I've known you now for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months." He said, "I have never seen that person. When you walk into the room, people take notice, people like you, you're like a magnet. Why do you talk like that?" I said, "That's my story." He said, "No, it's time to change your story."
Mm,
And I did. I changed my story. I really don't talk about it anymore. I did a TED Talk on something that I had never said out loud before, that which was craziness anyway. But the truth of the matter is that was my story. It was. It was my story. But it's not now.
yeah, that sort of underdog story of not being disempowered and not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I really, when I think about empowerment, and I always say that empowerment can't be bestowed; it's generated. And
Yep.
that's where we get into trouble, where we start talking about, well, we'll allow this or we'll allow that or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can allow somebody to do whatever you want to allow them to do. If they don't feel empowered inside themselves, they're not. I mean, there was never a time that someone didn't allow me to do something that I didn't do because I was not feeling able to do it myself. I had every opportunity, but
Right.
inside I felt disempowered versus you could have no opportunities and feel empowered. and
Absolutely.
make it happen.
Yeah, you look.
And what do you see as the relationship between that and intuition? I like to kind of think about those things. I think it's interesting.
I think intuition is something that a lot of people don't recognize. They're just not sure what it is. It's almost like, you're driving in a car and for some reason you're supposed to be going left, but for some reason you're going right because you just knew you should be going right.
Yeah.
And, people go, oh, but when you really think about it, it was something that was not i- in your regular routine. And you just did it anyway. And look what happened. Because if you would have turned left, you would have been in the middle of this horrible accident. But when you turned right, you were okay. So, I mean, I think that intuition shows up in many different facets. People just don't know what it is until you start talking about it. And then you say, well, my intuition said, blah, blah, blah. It's an underrepresented quality that people have. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think when you're aligned with it, it is your most empowered state. I mean,
Yeah.
as someone who's been in business for as long as you have been in business, like, do you have, you know, what is your practice for making decisions, for, taking big steps or whatever? And how does intuition play into it?
I know almost immediately if I should or should not be doing something. I may
How do
not
you
jump
know?
into it. If I say no to something, my back will instantly go like that, instantly
Um,
without question. But I also know when I'm not comfortable. There have been times when I would be introduced to somebody that has a huge opportunity for me, and I physically feel myself taking a step back. Like, the energy alone, it's the weirdest feeling, Abby. I just physically take that step backwards. But
yeah.
I mean, I am a risk taker, but I'm also not so impulsive that I, throw my stuff into the wind. I don't do that. I do research. I do ask lots of questions. My husband, the colonel, will tell you that I am beyond my limit of questions. Because I want to know, I'm interested. If I ask questions, I'm interested. That's all it is. But because of that, I also allow the time for my intuition to show up. If I don't say yes to something right away, my back won't go out. If
Mm,
I say yes and then I'm not supposed to be there, then my back will go out. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
almost like it's a sequence. But
Yeah, it's so interesting because the body keeps the score, right? The body
yeah,
always knows, and it's such a great place to look
yeah,
when you're trying to figure out the right move for you. The right move might be different for someone else. And the
absolutely.
practice is often just to go ask everybody else and take everybody else. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do?
But then you ask too many people and then you get too many, opinions. It's like, if you don't feel good and you go to 12 doctors until one doctor says, yeah, really, you're okay, because that's all you wanted to hear. But the other ones are telling you what's really going on. So you have to trust yourself and trust others. But you have to, my trust is like a really small circle. I don't have a million friends. I don't. I have lots of acquaintances, tons of acquaintances, but I have a very small group of people that I trust and they trust me. It goes with age, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
You learn. Not everybody's your friend, even though they're like, "What, man, I love you so much." No, you really don't.
No, they really don't. And they don't have to either. It's
It's
okay.
okay.
It's
I'm
okay.
good.
Good. Good. But it's I like what you said about like asking questions and stuff because I think that sometimes people can get intuition mixed up with like an impulsive decision
Right.
because sometimes something feels good, and it's like, "Oh, this feels good. It must be right." Well, not necessarily.
It
Right?
isn't. The colonel really doesn't go by his gut or anything. He doesn't. He's very, being retired colonel, you got your stuff going on, but it's here. But I remember distinctly we were making a decision. We were going to downsize and sell our house, and something came up, and it was he was on one Zoom, I was on one Zoom, the realtors were on another Zoom, and they had said something, and I saw his face just like change.
Huh.
And I said, "You know what? Let's let's regroup in a little bit. I need to hang up." And so now we weren't in the same house. He was in his office, I was in my office. So we came back on Zoom and I said, "What just happened?" He said, "I don't have the intuition you have. I don't use my gut like you use yours." He said, "But my gut is telling me don't do this." And I
Mm.
said, I was going to say the same thing. So he's never, and it's never really happened again, but I saw like this, whoop, like he was
Yeah.
done. Like it was very weird. So everybody has a different way of expressing it or showing it or following it.
Yeah, and how does it come into play with your work with women? Do you see what happens or how women tend to, because I know you work a lot with women, lead themselves astray by not listening to that?
Yeah, but I think it shows up differently though. Like when women are going astray and women are not listening to it, it's usually because they feel like they know the best. They know they don't really need help. They can just do this. And those are my least favorite clients when somebody said, "Oh, I've done everything. Yep, I've done this. Yep, I've done that. Yep, I've
Mhm.
done that.
Nah.
I had nothing else."
What do you need me for?
Right?
Yeah.
So, but that's how it shows up for me is that, when women are really that far removed, I don't know if it's their intuition or I think it's just they just can't make a decision. But the ones that really decide to work with me. Like there was a woman, she called me within the first minute. She said, "Can you coach me?" Like I didn't even say anything. So there's things there. I don't know if it's magnetic. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the energy, but there's certain people that I know I'm supposed to be working with.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna, hound them or anything, but I just say we're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and I think there's different people for different people, right? Like
Absolutely.
and I think that's actually a really important thing for people to think about too when you're looking at hiring someone, whoever that person is. It could be a coach or someone like Judy or me, or it could be, a carpenter, to build an addition to your house or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
there is a hit that is available out there for you to get, and if we're paying attention to it, it's there that's saying, yeah, this feels right. This is
Or
this is
or
meant
this
to be,
does
or
not feel right. We
yeah,
had somebody give us a prize for something, and I remember saying, all I wanted to do was step back in my house and close the door. I mean, I was so uncomfortable. He did nothing. He did nothing. He was very polite, but there was something there that just, I mean, I feel it right now. I feel how I felt that day. And then I said to him, I got to get on the Zoom call. And I just locked the door and came inside and I I was so uncomfortable. I don't know what the heck it was. I really don't know, but I just knew I could not stand there any longer. I couldn't.
wow,
It was
yeah.
weird. It was just he did nothing. He was very nice, but there was I don't know what it was, but it was not good for me. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't even really practice in the sort of woo woo.
I
That's
don't
not
and
really your realm, because
no.
I interview woo woo here, talk with business owners, we talk with, neuroscience psychologists and shamans. But what's interesting is that, everybody has a sense of
Yeah.
that inner knowing. And
Yeah.
it sounds like for you, it's really, really been a large part of your business life.
It has. I was as you're saying this, I remember I was speaking. I was the only female on stage many years ago for a very large conference in financial services. And of course, when I got off the stage, everybody wanted to hire me to go back into the field, which I wasn't going to do. But this one man came up to me and he said, um, I want to hire you. We have no women and I want to hire you. You need to help me. I will pay you a ton of money. He's giving me numbers with lots of zeros. And he said, yeah. And I said to him, well, let me ask you a question. Why do you want to have women? And he said, do me a favor, go look at our website, do some research, get all your questions together, and then we'll regroup. Okay. So I go to his website and there is not one woman anywhere, not even HR. Like there's nothing. There's
Mm.
nothing.
Uh,
And then I look at the leadership team and it's 12 men and they look exactly the same except their tie is different. I mean, it was just like everything that you can possibly think of in a male dominated industry. And he's won so many awards and they're very successful. So I called him back And I said, I got to look at at your website, and congratulations, man. You are so successful. That is so amazing. I'm so impressed. But I still have that question. Why women?
Right.
And he said, can I be 100% honest with you? And I said, well, if we're going to work together, because you're not honest ordinarily, we're going to ask that question. That's the first red flag that you get.
Don't tell
Can
me
I
what
be
he
honest with you?
said.
Yeah. So he said, women are the buzzword.
Oh God. I
I
was
said,
afraid. I was
what?
like, you're not going to say that.
I
You're
said,
not
what,
going to say
what, what does that even mean? And he said, everybody's talking about them. And I said, okay, so that's why you want them? He said, well, if everybody has them, we should have some.
Oh
So
my
that's how we
God.
talked about them. So I said to him, are you going to do any kind of special programs, have coaches or mentors? He goes, nope, treat them just like the men. And I said, okay, so when they fail, not if, when they fail, what are you going to do? He said, well, you have such great connections, you'll just get us more.
Oh my God.
So I said, well, for me, I don't care if male or female, I would never put anybody in a situation where they're going to fail, and they will fail here. And I don't think I'm the right person. That's when it came out, man. He started talking about who I was and
No.
every four-letter word you can think of. He
Oh,
blasted at me, and
gee.
I just sat on the phone and I let him do his thing. And I
Wow.
said, I need to thank you. He said, for what? And I said, because you just gave me the greatest confirmation of why I shouldn't be doing this. Thank you so much. And I just hung up, and I never ever looked him up again or anything. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I knew something was up, but I couldn't put my finger on it. That I had to like discover. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes it takes questioning, but I didn't
Yeah.
say yes right away either. Because if I would have said yes, I would have known I said the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I don't know, it just makes me think about, personal relationships that women get into.
Yeah,
Like here's a guy who was sort of really abusive and obnoxious and all of these things, but seemed on the front,
charming.
charming and all that stuff. And, there's so many times that when we get into relationships and it's not what it was. And we know that intuition exists for everybody, that it's there. And so, what kind of ideas do you have for people to tap into that? Like to not make that decision that is, I mean, I know I believe that everything happens for a reason. And so there's really nothing that everything is. In fact, I was just on a group call. I was telling you before, I run a group for young women, and I had my son come on because he's a master manifester and he works for Dispenza. And he was sharing how he was giving an example. And he said, like, for example, this semester, it's highly likely that I'm not going to pass my chemistry test, my chemistry class, because I've been learning a lot about time management. I feel like this was a great opportunity for him to, and he is. He's learning a shit ton about time management because he hasn't had any, because he's working and he's doing
Yeah.
school and he hasn't stayed on top of chemistry, right? But I do believe that there's really everything happens for a reason. But what do you say to women? And you've worked with so many and really mentored so many for a long time, like in where when things have been extremely male dominated, they still are, but even more so then. Um, how do you help them through that?
First and foremost, you have to know yourself. I mean, you have to watch for signs, because there will be some signs that you're uncomfortable or you're excited or whatever, but don't jump into anything. Like I tell people, think before you proceed. And I know that is really bad to tell a salesperson that, because all they want to do is close the deal.
Right.
And, I had said to somebody that was one of my coaches at one point, he said, well, what do you think? Do you want to work with me? And I said, I got to think about it. He said, isn't that what you hate when your clients say that to you? I'm like, I guess, but I do have to think about it. But I always say, like, ask questions. Just do some due diligence. Ask questions before you get involved with anything. Whether it is a personal relationship, whether it is a business relationship, you want to know where you should be, and you have to start to do even future casting. Like, what is it going to look like? How is it going to be when I get to that point? And I tell people to just visualize yourself on the other side of this? And what does it feel like? What is it, what does it sound like? And I do lots of exercises with people about future, like
Mhm.
talk about them in the present. I am, I have, not I wish and I want and I'll get or whatever. Talk about it in the present and see how it feels. Can you put that on and own it? But you can't people that don't believe in anything other than like what's black and white right in front of you, it's
Right.
very hard to tell somebody, use your intuition, listen to your gut. It's very hard, but once they have a taste of it, they understand what you're telling them. So even if it's, I wouldn't eat that if I were you. Mm-mm. That sushi from the gas station does not look that good. Oh no, it's good. I know it is, and then it's not. And they go, oh, I wonder if that was my intuition. I was not listening to it. I mean, that's as silly as it is,
But
but I
that's
just tell people
example.
like just know your situation, know your surroundings, know what's the opportunities and what's just something that's so impulsive that it's craziness.
And I think it's tough, particularly for women because we have, and this is what my TED talk was about, right? Like, because we're so conditioned to, just defer, really defer, defer. And so, especially in a business situation, and you've got someone telling you, this is the right way to do it, or that's the right way to do it, or they're not even telling you. You're just looking around, saying someone else must have the idea of the best way to do this, as though it can be completely separate from you.
Right. And there's so many people that are doing the same exact thing, but the same exact thing is different when it's you doing it.
Mm.
So, when people say to me, What do you think about this idea?" I just say, "Well, what do you think?" I do. I say, "Well, what do you think about it?" Well, there's so many people that are talking about marketing and sales. I don't know if I should do that. I said, "Is everybody going to work with everybody else, or can you get a piece of that business?" Well, I think I can because I know a lot of people. I said, "Well, let's talk about that." Because I mean, people just make a rash decision. I'm like, I can't do that. It gives everybody. And
Yeah.
we used to get that in, insurance. Everybody has diabetes. Nobody has money. It was the absolutes. And so what I did at one point as an agency manager, I made this very blingy purple sign that said next. And every time they would say, everybody this or nobody this, I just hold it up. They go, okay. And I'd put it down. And so it got to be a joke. But if you ask anybody that I trained through the years, they will say she had that next sign. And then after a while, I didn't need the sign. I would just go like this, and they knew exactly what it was. But sometimes you have to train people to not eliminate or include all the time because you can't. You can't. It's not always right. I don't care who you're including, it's not always right. I don't care who you're excluding, it's not always right. So you have to, you know,
Yeah, and it's kind of like what you were saying before. Your least favorite person to work with is what you're referring to. Really, is the certainty. Someone who's so certain that they have no question, they have no curiosity. They know they have all the answers, and I think that's it's not an unnatural state for people to get, in the sense of it's a very survival trait type of way, like that we've evolved. And it's scary to be vulnerable. And when you take that to an extreme, having any question or curiosity or not knowing exactly what's right for you all the time and having it very rigid can feel scary and vulnerable,
well,
but
once
it's very
but once
limiting.
once you move out of your comfort zone, it is scary and it's horrible because you don't know what you're walking into. But I always tell people once you walk out of your comfort zone into a new one because you haven't tried this before, that's going to become your new comfort zone. And don't get comfortable because you're going to do it again and then you're going to do it again.
Mm.
And if you go in it that way, then there's not the absolute and the certainty of whatever. But it's more when people say, "Oh, I've tried that. Did you try this?" "No, I didn't try it, but it'll never work." "But
Right.
I've done everything. Everything. You name it, I've done it."
Right.
"Have you done this?" "No, but it would never work." "But I've done every" that's what I mean. Like, so,
How do you deal with fear?
uh, I have to decide if it's real fear or if it's like, am I making this up in my head? You
Okay,
know?
what's the difference?
I don't know what the difference is, but sometimes when I know I'm making it up in my head because I just don't really want to do something, then I have to figure out like, why don't I really want to do this? Because I'm afraid to
Mhm.
do it. Why am I afraid to do this? Because what happens if, and sometimes it's scarier to think like, what happens if it actually works? If it
Good.
actually works, what's going to happen? Because this is going to be too big for me. Then I'm like, well, you can get people to help you, but I don't want people. I mean, I have this conversation with myself, but I don't want anybody to help me. Well, why not? Because nobody does it the way I do it. Well, maybe you could teach them, but it would take too long. I mean, I really seriously have this conversation with myself. I have very high expectations of myself. It took me 12 years to hire a VA. 12 years.
Oh my gosh.
Because and it's only because there was a person at an event who was doing a personality test, and when you gave in all your results, and he would one by one call you up, and he'd say to me, you're pretty awesome, but you should get yourself an old-fashioned executive assistant. I'm like, why? He said, because you're in the weeds. Like, okay, whatever. 2 years later, I'm back at this event. Here he is. He walks up to me, goes, did you get the executive assistant? He remembered me after he does like millions of these. And I
Wow.
said, yeah, not yet. He goes, yeah, well, now you have an F from me. And then I said to myself, now this is twice in 2 years. I said to myself, if the next place I go to, if one person says, why are you in the weeds? I'm getting a VA. And I went to a mastermind and I was on the hot seat. And as I was saying something, somebody in the back says, hey, why are you in the weeds? Why don't you have somebody to do that? And I went, oh my God, are you serious? 12 years and 3 confirmations it took me to do that.
Wow. So that is kind of an example, right, of your blind spot of where, like,
Totally.
probably intuitively you knew that somewhere, but you were blocking it.
Yeah, because why would I need that? It takes time to train somebody. It takes time to let them know how you work and it's not worth it. I'll just do it myself. She's awesome. She's been with me now for 3 or 4 years. She's awesome. She's got my voice. She does, the our brand is great. But ugh, mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the personality parts are interesting. They get in our way sometimes.
Yeah, this is one I had never done before, but I don't even remember the name of it, but I just know that's what he said once. That's what he said 2 years later. So there must have been something in there.
How often do you run into imposter syndrome?
A day, a
Yeah,
lot,
a lot.
everybody. And it doesn't matter what industry they're in. It doesn't matter how brilliant they are. It doesn't matter doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Imposter syndrome is real. It is real. And everybody has had it. They have it or they will have it. And that's difficult because you have to really talk yourself in and out of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to hear from someone like you who works with a lot of people because I always try and express that as well to my clients. Like you are not alone. But one of the dangerous things about imposter syndrome is that you think you're alone because you don't tell anybody that you feel like you have imposter syndrome.
Well,
And
but that's when you have to have somebody you get to talk to. Either if you don't have a coach or a mentor, then you have somebody that is a very close confidant that you can tell anything to, and they're not going to just laugh their head out off at you. You
yeah,
have to be able to do that.
yeah, but even that doesn't necessarily make it go away,
It
right?
No, it doesn't. But you have to evict them. You have to just say, okay. Somebody was on Facebook or something, and they said, I named mine Hal, and I said, Hal, sit down and get out of here. But you know what? It doesn't, and again, it doesn't matter how long you're in business because not too long ago, a couple of years ago, somebody asked me to be on a live stream. And I immediately said yes. I was so honored and blah, 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 until I saw who was on it. And then I said, I can't do this. I'm not big
Why?
enough. I'm not this enough.
Oh,
I'm not well known enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not tall enough. You name whatever enough, it was on there. And so I called my coach and she said to me, okay, so let's talk about this. Like, what are you afraid of? I said, I'm not afraid of anything. I just don't belong there. They're so far out of my league. And she said, oh, but you're amazing. And all the things that your coach would say to you when you're like,
right.
yeah, it's not working.
Whatever. Right.
So I also always have a male coach as well because I work with women. I need a male perspective. So I called him and he said to me, did you ask her or did she ask you? I said, she asked me. He said, then what are you talking about? It's not like you begged for this. They asked you. And I said, I know, but he said, no, there is no but here. He said, put on your big girl panties. just have a good time. Do it. You're going to be awesome. And I said, okay, I'll do this. And I did. And it was awesome. Yep. But Kevin O'Leary was on with me, or I was
Ah,
on with him. That
uh-huh.
freaked me out,
It
but I
freaked
made him
you out.
laugh. So it was okay.
Huh. Yeah. So it's interesting, I mean, you just never know what's freaking somebody out, right? Like you're someone who would get on a stage and, people will
I talked to
often,
10,000 people. I don't care.
yeah, right.
That that was not.
That
Mm-mm.
got you. That got
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, G, what would you like the listeners to know? Like what is it that you think is just the most important thing, that message that you have to share, that you just really want people to be aware of and to know?
I would say that if you're really you really have to know your people. You have to know who you can count on. You have to know who you can trust. You have to know who you work with. You have to know who you work for. You have to know your people. And once you get to know your people, then you can calm down a little bit because then you know where you are. Because, as a leader, and most of us, I hope all of us decide that you are a leader, even if you lead yourself. As you get higher up in the food chain, it becomes very lonely up here. And so when you become that lonely leader, you don't know who you can trust. You don't know who you
Mhm.
can ask a question. You don't know who you can share information with. So you have to know your people and you have to hold on to them tight because you shouldn't be doing anything alone. You don't need to do anything alone. You need to have a village. And if there's nothing more important than that, I mean, if that's all you hear, that's what I'm saying. Know your people, have your village, hold them tight.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you don't have to do everything. My designer always says, like, if I've been like paralyzed before. Like one time I was teaching a class on burnout and I was so burnt out. And I was like, I can't, like, I just can't even think. And she's in England. She was like, well, it's a good thing creativity was never meant to be done alone. And,
Mary Poppins.
yeah, exactly. She put together a slide deck. She was like, what do you think of this? And I was like, oh, yeah, I can work with this. Yeah. But it was like it was so calming. It was like, oh, thank God I'm not alone. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I always know when somebody needs to talk to me. I do. And, they may not be my clients any longer, but it doesn't matter because I love them anyway, no, regardless of whether they're with me as a client or not. And for some reason, I know, and I could just pick up my phone and send a text and say, hey, are you okay? And they go, oh my God, I need to talk to you. I know. I just know it. And
Yeah.
so I know my people. I do. I know my people. And sometimes I don't always love my people because they're not supposed to be my people.
When I was
And I
supposed
know
to be
that.
there. Yeah. And you know that. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, what Heart Math talks about, non-local intuition. You know when someone's upset, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Um, well, where can people find you? And what do you, I know you have a couple of things that you're passionate about now. You've done so many things, but now you're really sort of zeroing in on a couple of things that you're passionate about. And where can people find you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn under Judy Hoberman. I'm there. I mean, I've got a lot of presence on LinkedIn. You can go to my website at sellinginaskirt.com. I'm on all social media. Usually it's selling in a skirt. And that's what it is. What I'm loving to do, because I have gotten to the age where I don't want to do 150,000 things that I've been doing because I just don't want to do them anymore. So I have two things that I'm very passionate about. One is executive coaching and one are masterminds. And those are the things that for 2025, that'll be all I'm doing. There'll be things that feed into that, but that's all I'm going to be doing. I don't want to do
Mhm.
everything that you can possibly think of because I've done them and it's okay. It's good. But
Yeah.
I can check a box and say I did it. People
Yeah.
say, "Are you going to do another TED talk?" I'm like, "Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
I did a TED talk. It was awesome. I loved it. One of the best things I've ever done."
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to intuition too. Like a lot of
Yep.
times we end up doing all these things because our hyperachiever part says I got to do this, or we're
Yep.
comparing ourselves to somebody else, or we've got to
Yep.
check a box to say we're worthy, or whatever it is.
I don't want to do it.
And you get to a point where you're just like, wait a minute, intuitively, I'm doing that for all the wrong reasons, and I
Yes.
don't have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. My husband keeps saying, are you going to write another book? You have so much stuff in your head." I'm like, "Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. I
Don't
don't
be
want to
like
write another book. I really don't. Would I ever write a book? I don't want to say I'll never write one, but there's nothing here in the near future that I don't think I have anything more to say in a book. I really don't
Yet.
yet.
Yet. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, my pleasure.